They say love is the most powerful force in the universe, capable of elevating us to the most sublime heights, or mercilessly throwing us into the darkest depths of pain. But what happens when that love is not reciprocated? When we give every part of ourselves to someone who sees us only as a tool, another stepping stone toward their own ambitions? The hall glowed under the golden light filtering through the stained glass windows. Every detail had been carefully planned to make this day perfect. White flowers decorated every corner, their fragrance mingling with the scent of the aromatic candles, creating an ethereal, almost magical atmosphere. The notes of the wedding march began to resonate, filling the space with its solemn melody. Corinne. Holland took slow, measured steps down the red carpet. Her white silk and lace dress slid behind her like a waterfall of snow. The veil, as delicate as a spiderweb, partially covered her face, but it couldn't hide the glimmer of happiness in her eyes. After 3 years of dating, she would finally be married to Bruce Ashton, the man who had stolen her heart. From a distance, waiting for her at the altar, Bruce looked like a vision in his white suit. The light streaming through the windows seemed to concentrate on him, accentuating his aristocratic features and that elegant bearing that had so captivated her years before. His perfectly combed dark hair contrasted with the paleness of his face, giving him an almost unreal air. Every step Corinne took was a reminder of everything they'd overcome together. The disapproving looks from Bruce's family, the financial hardships, the malicious rumors, none of it mattered now. They were about to seal their love in front of God and society. When she reached the altar, Bruce stepped forward to hand her the bouquet of white lilies, her favorite flowers. Corinne's eyes filled with tears of joy when she saw that he had remembered that small detail. The priest, an elderly man with a kind expression, looked at the couple with wise eyes and began the ceremony in a clear and solemn voice. Dear brothers and sisters, we are gathered here to unite Bruce Ashton and Corinne Holland in holy matrimony. The priest's words flowed like a calm stream as Corinne tried to control her racing heart. It all seemed like part of a dream, one she never wanted to wake up from. Finally, the crucial moment arrived. Do you, Bruce Ashton, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife? Do you promise to love, honor, respect, and accept her in sickness and in health for the rest of your lives? The silence that followed those words seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Corinne looked at Bruce expectantly, her smile beginning to falter at the sudden tension she sensed in him. But instead of the affirmative response she expected, she saw doubt and uncertainty cloud her fiancé's features. At that moment, as if by a sign of fate, the living room doors swung open. Rita Ashton, Bruce's younger sister, staggered in. Her face was distorted by crying, and her eyes, identical to her brother's, reflected pure terror. Bruce, she cried, her voice cracking with tears. Something terrible has happened. Leah, she... The name fell like a bolt of lightning across the room. Leah Burgess. Corinne felt a chill run down her spine. That name evoked bitter memories and sleepless nights. Leah Burgess was Bruce's unattainable love, the woman who had broken his heart years ago, when the Ashton family fell from grace. Instead of staying by his side during the difficult times, Leah had chosen opportunities abroad, leaving Bruce devastated. It was then that Corinne, who had always admired Bruce from the shadows, approached him, offering her unconditional support. For 3 years she had been his rock, his confidant, the woman who helped him rebuild the Ashton empire. And now, just as they were about to seal their union, Leah's ghost returned to haunt them. What happened to Leah? Bruce asked, his voice tinged with a panic Corinne had never heard before. The intensity of his reaction was like a stab to the bride's heart. He's hemorrhaging, Rita sobbed, clinging to her brother's arm like a lifeline. The doctor says he might not survive. Without a second thought, Bruce let go of Corinne's hand and headed for the door. The bride, stunned by the turn of events, followed him, grabbing his arm before he could leave the altar. Bruce, you can't. Just leave like this, she pleaded, her voice barely a broken whisper. Today is our wedding. Are you really going to leave me here? The guests' murmurs began to spread through the room like a wildfire. Corinne felt every glance like a sharp dagger, piercing her dignity. Tears threatened to spill, but she refused. To show weakness. "Bruce, please," she continued, trying to maintain her composure. "Let's at least finish the ceremony." "Leah was hit by a car saving me," Bruce explained, struggling to free himself from Corinne's grasp. His once warm and loving expression had transformed into a cold, distant mask. "I can't abandon her right now." Then, as if the masks had fallen away, revealing the stark, merciless truth, Bruce added, "Corinne, you know perfectly well that this marriage is nothing more than a transaction. You will be Mrs. Ashton only on paper, nothing more. Don't interfere in my personal affairs." Transaction. The word echoed in Corinne's mind, bouncing off the walls of her conscience, leaving an echo of pain and humiliation. 3 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion reduced to a simple business transaction. A bitter smile spread across her lips as reality settled over her like a blanket of ice. "So that's what our marriage means to you?" she whispered, each word laced with pain. "A transaction?" "Yes," Bruce replied without a hint of hesitation in his voice. That simple word, that sharp syllable, resonated in Corinne's chest like thunder. Each beat of her heart brought with it a fresh wave of suffocating pain, as if someone were squeezing her heart with iron fists. "Sorry," Bruce muttered before quickly walking away, leaving the word hanging in the tense air. Frozen where she stood, Corinne watched him walk away, unable to move or speak. The pain in her chest became unbearable, as if someone were slowly carving at her heart with a dull knife. A chill ran through her body, leaving her numb, oblivious to the whispers and stares of the guests. Memories flowed uncontrollably. 3 years ago, when Bruce took over the Ashton family business, they were on the verge of bankruptcy. He'd confessed that he couldn't offer her a stable future at the time, but promised to marry her as soon as the company was back on its feet. Corinne clung to that promise with all her might. She used her position and connections to help him rise, from obscurity to a prominent place in the business world, all in the hopes of speeding up his wedding day and gaining his family's approval. Now, reality dawned on him with merciless clarity. Their 3-year relationship had been nothing more than a transaction for him. She had been the only one with genuine feelings in that relationship. Her years of dedication and sacrifice had been reduced to nothing in the presence of Bruce's true love. No matter how hard she tried to hold back her tears, they began to stream down her face as violent tremors shook her body. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if a vital part of her had been ripped out and left to bleed out in front of everyone. Rita, who had been standing in the hallway watching the scene, showed obvious satisfaction at Corinne's distress. Her lips curved into a malicious smile as she approached her. "Corinne, did you really think my brother would have chosen you, an uneducated country bumpkin, if you hadn't meddled in his life?" he sneered, every word calculated to hurt. "Know your place and leave quietly." The words hit Corinne like a whip. Despite the pain, she held her head high, refusing to be humiliated further. "The Ashton family only succeeded because of my efforts. Have you forgotten that yet?" He replied with dignity, though his voice trembled slightly. "Stop talking nonsense," Rita exclaimed, pointing an accusatory finger at her. "Do you think you're that important? The Ashton family would thrive even without you." Each word was like a blow to Corinne's already wounded heart. Was this how the Ashton family viewed her contribution? As something insignificant, dispensable? Tracy Ashton, Bruce's mother, gracefully rose from her seat and approached Corinne. Her face, which had always displayed polite disdain, now reflected clear disgust. "Enough of this spectacle," she declared firmly. "In addition to humiliating yourself, you're putting the Ashton family's reputation at risk." Then, turning to the guests, he began to apologize for the unexpected event, bidding farewell to each of them with a kind smile, as if the interrupted wedding were a mere setback and not the destruction of a lifelong dream. Corinne watched the crowd disperse, murmuring and casting curious glances in her direction. Her dream wedding had been nothing more than a fantasy, an illusion that vanished, like smoke, Why had all her love and sacrifice resulted only in rejection? Had she made such a grave mistake by loving someone who didn't reciprocate her feelings? Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks as she closed her eyes, letting reality settle like a weight on her heart. The white dress, which she had chosen so carefully, now weighed on her like a burden, a reminder of her broken dreams. 30 minutes later, Corinne was wandering alone through the deserted streets, aimlessly. She had left the Ashton mansion without taking anything, leaving behind not only her belongings, but also 3 years of her life. The sky, which had been clear during the morning, began to darken with storm clouds. Soon, the first drops of rain began to fall, tentatively at first, but quickly turning into torrential rain. Corinne glimpsed a bus stop in the distance, a refuge from the mercilessly pouring rain. Barefoot, having lost her shoes sometime during her desperate escape, she ran toward it, but fate wasn't finished with her yet. A sharp stone cut her foot, forcing her to limp the rest of the way. The physical pain, however, was insignificant compared to the agony she felt inside. The unexpected sound of a car horn interrupted the steady rhythm of the rain. When the headlights illuminated Corinne, her eyes widened in terror, her pupils dilating as she sensed the approach of death. Corinne's mind went completely blank as her feet felt rooted to the spot. The speeding car zoomed past her, missing her by mere inches. The strong gust of wind knocked her off her feet, sending her sprawling onto the wet sidewalk. On that deserted street, the driver would likely continue on his way into the rainy night. After all, there were no witnesses. However, fate seemed to have other plans. The roar of the engine echoed in the air as the driver pulled around and stopped the vehicle just inches from where Corinne lay. The passenger door opened, revealing a sleek figure. Custom-made black leather shoes touched the ground as the man descended, opening a black umbrella that contrasted with the stormy night. "Are you okay?" Nate Hopkins asked, his deep voice echoing in the humid air. Corinne looked up, taking in the sight before her. The man's face seemed carved from stone, with sharp angles and defined lines that suggested nobility. But it was his eyes that captured her attention. They held a mysterious magnetism that evoked something in her, a faint recognition that seemed beyond her reach. That pair of eyes triggered something in his mind, a memory lost in the mists of time that he couldn't fully identify. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, drowned out by the rain. She tried to get up, but a sharp pain shot through her scraped legs and injured foot, making her stagger. At that moment, a strong arm grabbed her waist, pulling her against a solid body. The coldness emanating from Nate enveloped her, contrasting with the warmth radiating from his body. Instinctively, Corinne placed her hands on his firm chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her fingers. The contrasting sensations overwhelmed her, making her aware of her vulnerability. She tried to pull away, but Nate held her more firmly and lifted her into his arms with an ease that surprised her. "What are you doing? Put me down," Corinne exclaimed, her voice taking on an icy tone that reflected her expression. During her 3-year relationship with Bruce, they'd never done anything more than hold hands. This stranger's forward behavior left her completely uncomfortable, despite the strange familiarity she felt toward him. Nate's steady gaze bore into hers, the authority evident in his voice. "You're hurt, and you need to go to the hospital. I can walk by myself," Corinne protested, her body tense as his cool breath caressed her skin. "Don't move," he ordered firmly, leaving no room for argument. The moment Corinne settled into the car, the cold interior made her sneeze. Without saying anything, Nate adjusted the temperature controls and, noticing her shivering, gently placed his coat over her shoulders. "Try not to catch a cold," he said in a tone that, although formal, had a hint of genuine concern. "Thank you," Corinne murmured, wrapping the coat around her. The garment carried his scent and warmth with it, causing her heart to race for no apparent reason. A flash of amusement crossed Nate's eyes, and he noticed her cheeks blush slightly. "I'm the one who should be thanking you," he said, starting the engine. Confusion crossed Corinne's face. "Why?" When Nate answered, his voice was firm and sincere. for accepting my apology and giving me the opportunity to make things right. The drive to the nearest hospital passed in comfortable silence, interrupted only by the soft hum of the engine and the rain pattering against the windows. Despite her injuries, Corinne insisted on walking on her own once they arrived. Politely, declining Nate's help, he, respecting her independence, simply walked beside her, adapting to her slow and painful pace. After being treated and discharged, Corinne found him talking on the phone in the hallway, his tall silhouette standing out against the white walls of the hospital. As soon as he saw her, Nate ended the call and handed her a business card. "Here's my contact information," he said, his voice calm and professional. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me." "I don't need anything else," she replied politely, wanting to put this strange situation behind her and take back control of her life. He handed the coat back to her, adding, "Here, I'll cover the cleaning costs." Nate looked at the coat she held out to him, and a slight smile appeared on his lips. "You can keep it," he said. "You seem to need it more than I do." His words, simple as they were, struck a chord she hadn't expected. A lump formed in her throat as she tried to contain the sudden surge of emotion that swept over her. She told herself this was a result of the day's events: shock, exhaustion, and a broken heart. Surely that was why she was touched by the kindness of a stranger when those who supposedly loved her had treated her so cruelly. "Thank you, but I really have to go now," Corinne said softly, vulnerability evident in her voice. Straightening her posture, she walked away, determined to take care of some important matters at the Ashton family residence before closing that chapter of her life for good. Nate stood where he was, watching her walk away with an unreadable gaze, his eyes following her every movement as if he were recording her image in his memory. "We'll meet again," he murmured to himself, a silent promise that floated in the hospital air. Corinne walked through the door of what would be her and Bruce's shared room. The stillness of the room reflected her solitude. Only she would inhabit that space that night. Her gaze fell on the heart-shaped balloons that adorned the space, which now seemed to mock her pain. Without a second thought, he popped them one by one, the synthetic material crunching beneath his fingers with a sound that gave him a strange satisfaction. The romantic decorations in the room only intensified his resentment, each a reminder of empty promises and broken dreams. With methodical precision, she removed each of the elements that adorned the place: the scented candles, the rose petals, scattered on the bed, the strings of lights they'd placed to create an intimate and romantic atmosphere. Finally, she found herself standing in front of a photograph of them hanging on the wall. She stood motionless before the image of illusory happiness, gazing at the smiling faces, looking into the camera with bright, hopeful eyes. In the photograph, Bruce was holding her waist and she was resting her head on his shoulder. They seemed like the perfect couple, radiating with love and mutual trust. Feeling her grief transform into something cold and indifferent, Corinne grabbed a pair of scissors from the nearby desk. With trembling but determined hands, she began to cut out the photograph, separating the smiling faces, slicing in half that frozen moment that was now nothing more than a lie. After eliminating any trace of their shared past, she collapsed onto the couch, physically and emotionally exhausted. Time passed slowly as darkness crept across the sky, casting shadows over the room. She lay awake until dawn, her thoughts a whirlwind of memories, regrets, and resolutions. Just as he was about to fall asleep, the sound of the door opening broke the silence. He made no attempt to greet the newcomer enthusiastically, but remained where he was, a picture of disappointment and determination. Bruce walked in as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't abandoned his fiancée at the altar hours before. He settled into the nearest seat, massaging his temples, visibly tired. "Bring me a glass of water," he said, his tone casual, as if he were talking to a maid and not the woman who was supposed to be his wife. Corinne couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Bruce, there's nothing more between us," she declared, her words resonating with the finality of a judge passing sentence. He stared at her intently, his eyes unreadable, a perfect mask hiding his thoughts. Corinne held his gaze while a sarcastic smile spread across her face. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked, his voice thick with irony. "Didn't you make your decision the moment you left me at the altar? Or maybe it was the day Leah returned to the country." Bruce took a cigarette and lit it casually, the lighter's flame flickering briefly in the tense room. After taking a long drag, he exhaled slowly before speaking. "This is the best thing for us," he said with a calmness that infuriated Corinne. "You always misunderstood Leah. Continuing this charade would only hurt you more." Corinne's penetrating gaze analyzed the man in front of her. This stranger who had shared her life for 3 years, this man she had loved devotedly, now seemed like a complete stranger. "I wonder, is there anything you wouldn't sacrifice for Leah?" he teased, his voice tinged with bitterness. Bruce stubbed out his cigarette in a nearby ashtray, impatience evident on his face. "For 3 years I tried to forget Leah, but love isn't something you can control," he confessed, his gaze lost in some distant place. "Forgive me and don't take your anger out on her. She's not to blame for this." Hearing those words, Corinne began to laugh, a laugh that bordered on hysteria, laced with pain and disappointment. 3 years of dedication were now in the past, years in which she had strived to love him, hoping that her persistence might warm his frozen heart. She had cut family ties and sacrificed her dreams, all for a man who now discarded her relationship with the distant. Love is not something that can be controlled. Seeing Corinne's upset state, Bruce frowned, an unexpected pain assailing his chest. He took a card out of his pocket and placed it on the table. "There's $1 million on this card," he said, as if the money could make up for all the damage. "Done. It's enough for you to live a comfortable life in the country." For him, the 3 years she had spent with him could be compensated with money. However, what Bruce didn't know was that $1 million meant nothing to Corinne. It had never been money that attracted her to him, but what she believed to be true love. "Bruce, I stayed only for you," she retorted, her delicate features cold as ice, and her eyes shining with determination. "I don't care about the power and wealth of the Ashton family. Besides, I never wanted the coveted title of Mrs. Ashton." He stood up from the couch, drawing himself up to his full height, his dignity intact despite everything that had happened. "Keep your apologies and your money," he continued, his voice firm and clear. "And don't forget that there will never be a chance of reconciliation between us." Her words floated in the air as she headed toward the door, head high and shoulders back, a picture of pride and determination. Bruce watched her walk away, feeling his heart constrict, making it difficult to breathe. Involuntarily, his hand reached out, trying to grasp the emptiness left by Corinne's departure. In that moment, perhaps for the first time, he realized what he was truly losing. When Corinne left, she took nothing with her except Nate's coat slung over her shoulders, a reminder of the unexpected kindness she had received amidst so much cruelty. Her body shaking, she limped out onto the street, feeling intensely cold despite the bright sun just beginning to peek over the horizon. Taking out her cell phone, she called Karina Brooks, her best friend, and asked, her voice slightly trembling, "Karina, can you come get me?" About 20 minutes later, a red sports car pulled up to the curb. Karina, an exuberant woman with a personality as vibrant as her car's color, quickly got out upon seeing her friend. Noticing the bandage on Corinne's leg, she took off her sunglasses, her eyes wide with concern. "Honey, what happened?" he asked, helping Corinne into the car. "Karina, is it okay if I spend a few days at your house?" Corinne murmured weakly, settling into the comfortable car seat before recounting everything that had happened in the last 24 hours, as Corinne told her story. Karina's face went from concern to disbelief and finally to pure outrage.